and see where God led us. And he led us here. And we're sure about that because no one was really in charge of planning this process. And you're still part of the development of this. One of the things that Linda felt very strongly about was that we should go to a format where it's sort of modeled on what was described in Acts of everyone comes with something and they're given a place to speak that into each other's lives for the building up of the body. And that's what we're doing. Now, one of the things that everyone has questions about is, so how does this work? And again, we're really not good with experimenting because in our society, we're really good about planning and performing and making sure that everything happens like clockwork and, you know, we're technologically in control of the situation. We're trying to be judicious in our application of control because it really is up to God to lead us through this. And so when Katie put out the announcement about everyone comes or come with a thought, an idea, we really believe that we will hear and allow God to step into the development of us as a worship following body of believers. So that's where we are right now, in this very moment. So when we go through this for the next, I don't know, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, it's over. It's over when it's over. And we're going to trust that God will tell us or give us the sense that, hey, everything's done. We also have to be comfortable when there's dead air, which in my perspective is important because one of the things that we do is we try to have something distracting us or an activity. We're not comfortable sitting there in silence and listening. But this forum is going to force us to do that simply because, one, we can't talk over each other, and two, people are going to go, well, is it my turn or whatever? And we're going to walk through that, but that is not a bad thing in my perspective. So for what little planning we've done, Linda wanted to open with a song.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Okay, so I just wanted to read part of this verse too, because this is, it kind of goes hand in hand. It does go hand in hand with the passage in Acts about everyone bringing something for the edification. But in Ephesians 4, 4:15 and 16, it says, but speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in all aspects into him who is the head, even Christ, from whom the whole body, being fitted and held together by what every joint supplies, according to the proper working of each individual part, causes the growth of the body for the building up of itself in love. And I think that the phrase, what every joint supplies, that's what's holding us up, holding us together, building us up by what every joint supplies. And as we think about what a joint is, it's where two pieces come together. And so this is essentially the working of the body, and what each person supplies, there's going to be fruit, there's going to be growth, there's going to be good things. And so I feel like that always makes me focus even more so. I mean, my relationship with the Lord is utmost, but when I'm with someone, looking extra carefully at what is God speaking through this other part that is supplying. And with all of you guys here, some people who we haven't seen forever, it's just like extra special treasure. So I'm very excited that you guys are here, and hope other people are able to check in too. So I'm going to do a song. I'm going to share a screen. The piano I'm going to keep really low, because if it gets louder, it takes over the voice part. So it's not going to be lovely, but I mean, it's going to be lovely, but it's not going to be, it's not going to be what you might expect. So I think I got the words so they'll fit on the big screen. Oh, yay. You guys can see them okay? Okay, awesome. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, we live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one that could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one that could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your love and lead me in your love to those around me. And I will build my life
So is this where you want us to start doing the things that we've brought?
Are you asking Jesus or are you asking me?
Well, I'm asking you.
You should go, Katie.
Okay. So we were bringing something that edifies the body and asking myself, where is God meeting me right now? And I went to bed with a couple of verses in mind, but nothing that was like, yeah, this is what God is doing right now. It was more like, well, this would be edifying. And I always read before I go to bed, and I'm kind of doing a study right now on something totally unrelated, but just happened to hit a portion of the book that was like, yeah, this is what God is doing in you right now. So briefly, I have been really broken over just all of the division in the world right now. And I think the world is kind of the big way of putting it, but the division, it even boils down to like there's division between me and my parents because we disagree very strongly about some things going on right now. And there's just division everywhere. And I've been really blessed to have division with people that I love anyway and love me back anyways. But I see a lot of circumstances where there's division and no love, no forgiveness, no healing. And to see that in the church has basically forced me off Facebook. It's forced me off of so many things because it is so incredibly painful. And I've seen, attacks on the church, but also attacks from the church and attacks within the church. Not talking about our church specifically, but just the church as the kingdom of God on earth and widespread. So it's caused a lot of tension, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of pain and fear. And I'm reading this book called Strength and Weakness. It's by Andrew Comiskey, who's a Vineyard guy who's super awesome. And I just thought I'd read this section because it was really good. Would it help for you to read along with me? I know some people that helps. I can just read it, but I also did type it up if somebody wants to read along. You want to give me a thumbs up, thumbs down if it's necessary, unnecessary? Not necessary? Okay, then I'm just going to read it to you.
Katie,
Yeah.
maybe afterwards just share it, email it, whatever, so we can read it as a follow-up.
Perfect.
Be nice.
Okay, so it's 2 pages. So it's about five paragraphs, but I'll try to be as succinct as possible. Okay. Conflicts within the church brought suffering to Paul, but that suffering gave rise to rich consolation and compassion from the Father. Paul welcomed that comfort in his own distress. He then sought to address the church out of the compassion he had received. This word begins the letter to the Corinthians as it should rightfully begin our service of healing for the broken body. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves have received from God. For just as the sufferings of Christ flow over into our lives, so also through Christ our comfort overflows. Paul discovered affliction in his passion for the bride. More than that, he discovered the compassion of the one who loved through him. Suffering for the people gave rise to greater love for them. Instead of inciting rage or even control, Paul's distress became the ground for powerful grace. That spirit pervaded Paul's tone as he addressed the crisis at hand. He freely admitted his weaknesses, then ended his letter with powerful, authoritative love. Paul's response to the Corinthians can be a model for us as we seek to love the church. Like the apostle, we begin by acknowledging that we are part of the body. We are weak and desperately in need of the Lord and one another. This releases grace for the church, tender mercies with which to love her. We also, like Paul, can welcome suffering on behalf of the church. We can proceed in the confidence that Jesus is forging his way, the way of the cross, into our hearts through such trials. And last, like Paul, we can expect powerful love to arise in us as we take our places as body builders. Secure in our servant authority, we assert Christ's grace and truth and transforming power in the body to prepare her for his return. This is the last paragraph, and this is the part that I think spoke most powerfully to me. Our commitment to loving the church begins with our identifying ourselves as a part of her. It defies the very nature of how Jesus sees us to try and separate ourselves from the church. He sees us individually, yet he is restoring us as part of a much greater whole, the bride for whom he is returning. Still, many of us may seek to distance ourselves from this family on the basis of her brokenness. We may even equate the local Christian body with our troubled natural families, unsafe, not deserving of our trust, and to be sure, the church is broken. Nevertheless, we cannot do as we may have done with our natural families and seek to disassociate from her. We must make peace with her. We must also face our part in the family's brokenness and become a part of her cure. So for me, and just where I'm at right now, not that I was like wanting to leave the church, but there is a part of me that handles things by disassociating and just wanting to run away. And so all of that, and able to see that we are such a part of this, and this is such a part of how Jesus created us to be. And he is restoring the church to be his bride. He is coming for a bride, and we want to be as whole as possible. We can't fracture. We have to learn how to love through this, how to heal through this. And I especially like the part where it said, Paul, rather, he's in authority over the Corinthians, and this crisis is in front of him. And rather than inciting rage or even control, he found profound grace. And I feel like that, to me, that spoke directly to my heart, because I think my first reaction is anger and rage. My second reaction is to want to control it. And it flat out rebuked both of those responses and said, find the profound grace. Where is your love for the church right now? And I just felt like, wow, that was a major wake-up call for me, to build the church up, to find the grace to suffer with Christ in this. I think he suffers with the division in the body and the anger and the pain and fear and anxiety that we are feeling right now. But to suffer with him and to love, to allow him to love through us. Sorry, I was a little long, but felt like it was for us.
So, thank you for that. I've been so emotional this morning. And I realized, this is the first time we get together on Zoom. But Linda, while you were worshiping and I was worshiping with you, I just, I've been missing the church so much. And, it's not easy to follow Jesus when you're alone. We're meant to worship together. And I just realized with those words and worshiping together, that was so powerful. And I too feel so broken about what's happening in this country. And I'm not an American, I'm a Canadian, but I'm upset and I'm angry and I don't agree with either side. I'm in the middle, and I feel so hurt by what's happening, and I'm so afraid by what's happening. But we need to, as a church, stand together. It doesn't matter whether we agree or not, but we are one body. We are one church, and we have to be together. And we are called to be together. We are called to worship together. And the worship song, and just seeing your faces, and I saw Katie singing and we were singing, and Linda singing, and I couldn't see everybody, but it was so powerful. And this is what we need to do. We become stronger as Christians when we do this together. I do, anyhow. And I wasn't going to say anything, but when you read that, it's, yeah, this is good. This is good. And this is what we all need to do. We need to be together. It doesn't matter if we agree on everything. We're not going to agree on everything. You know, whether it's music or it's whatever it is, we are not going to agree. So this is what we need to do. We need to come together and agree on. We all agree that, you know, that the Lord is our Father, that Jesus is our Savior, and He is hurting too. I know that.
I wasn't going to talk about this subject, and I'm only going to take a minute because it isn't really what I think I want to share later. But when we got that email and were asked, you know, to think about something to share, what did this basic topic, a version of what you just shared, Katie, did come to mind because it's been very heavy on my heart, our hearts. I've never before that I can recall in my life not been proud of being an American. And what's kind of funny, sad, screwy is I'm not proud of it for very different reasons than an awful lot of other people. So even saying that doesn't necessarily align me with a lot of what's out there because I don't agree with much of what's being said, and to some degree on both sides. But what I realized, and it's been driving me incredibly sad. I mean, I can't tell you how many times in the last, maybe it's 6 months, I've been thankful I felt like I was old enough that maybe I can live out my days before the end. Or, you know, maybe it's time to just move to Nova Scotia and shut the doors and, you know, and I'm not, I mean, it sounds goofy, but I really have thought that. We've started to talk about, well, we have that, we can pretty much shut the world out maybe for enough years. And what I realized, especially when you were reading, is not only is that stupid and not really appropriate, I think, but it makes this huge, incredibly ridiculous assumption that God's no longer in charge. You know, and one of my favorite verses, and a verse that I've lived on many times in my life, you know, is I think it's 2 Corinthians 9, but it's 9:10 or something, I don't know. But it's, my grace is sufficient, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. You know, and this is a moment in time, as with so many, but in particular, where I know I can't do fundamentally anything to change the big picture. I mean, we can talk with each other, we can share, we can build each other up or hang on to each other. And maybe we can make a difference in our lives, which is all we ever can do. But in the big picture, you know, but God is in control. It's not like this is surprising him. It's not like he's not able to handle it. You know, I don't know where it's going. I don't know what he's going to do, but I do know, and when you were reading, I was reminded that instead of seeing the desperation and the emptiness and what I perceive of as, you know, the world and our nation going in a really bad direction, I need to just step back and know that God is still in control, because he always has been and he always will be. And where we're going is glorious. And yeah, so thank you.
Yeah.
I had this verse come up to mind just while we were talking earlier. And actually, I kind of go to it more often than I realize, and it's Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. So I'm like all of you, just frustrated with everything that's going on in the world, whether it's politics or the pandemic. Like you said, Paul, God's in control, and that verse helps me to take a step back and rest. And yep, don't forget He's in control. Doesn't do me any good to get upset, except to just get it out and then keep chugging along.
Okay, I'm going to bring up the counterpoint. We have to learn how to love each other. Doesn't come natural. Part of loving each other is to be able to engage with those who are called to be part of us. That have a very, very strong opinion about something. And it's not up to us to change them. It's up to us to be able to be in the same room with them, to listen to them. Because Paul didn't shy away from conflict, because the people that he was writing letters to, Corinthians, and all the churches actually, if you look at his letters, you know, they were just going, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And he didn't say throw away your opinions. He took a stand. One of the things that's ripping us apart is our inability to walk in the center of the road. We think that walking in the center of the road is, well, I just don't care about it. And to not care about it basically means, from a practical sense, that I don't engage where you're engaged. There used to be a saying that the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. I think we saw that in the scriptures where Paul was addressing the taking of the sacraments and sharing meals, where there was a group of Christians that were hanging out with their friends, and it didn't say friends, but they were all hanging out. One group was hanging out together and the other group was hanging out together, and they were both totally ignorant of the lives of the others, regarding the sharing of food and getting together as the saints. And we have a tendency to not want to put out the energy to really walk and share our lives with someone whose focus is so different than ours. Because we have this with the giftings, we have this with ministries, we have this with everything. But you're interested in that, I have no interest in that. So I don't hate you, I'm indifferent towards you. And that is, from my perspective, something that we need to be very aware of in our lives, because our culture gives us so many avenues to do whatever we want to do that we can ignore. We can ignore the people that God has specifically called into our lives, which is the local church, which is kind of where the thought that Katie put up in the opening piece of paper that said, who exactly is my enemy? And this has been brought up before Sunday service, that we don't actually have enemies in our concept of enemy. But Jesus calls us to love our enemies. And to a great extent, we live in a culture where our enemies are the people who disagree with what we believe. And all of our actions and who we listen to is geared towards separating us, because we have an innate desire not to hang out with people that challenge our worldview, whatever that is, down to the church that you go to, down to how we break up into small groups. I mean, Doug's been preaching on dying to self. Well, I never thought that loving the people in Vineyard Christian Fellowship of Livermore was dying to self. But I realize that that's part of it, because it's so easy for me to ignore and to be indifferent towards those who are, by definition, called into my life, that I can withdraw from, or not, I can not engage with. I can not care about whatever they care about. So in this turmoil, it's interesting because in the SOCOM meeting, we have kind of touched on this concept that yes, God is in control, Well, he is in control of of who we end up associating with, because he brings it into he brings these people into our purview. And we always try to, again, sort through this and say, okay, I'm just going to hang out with these people, or I'm just going to talk to these people, or I'll be concerned about these people. What's happening in the greater area of our world, of our culture, is that we can no longer run. We can no longer run from division. Because division is everywhere and will continue to be everywhere. But the message of hope is that this is a great opportunity for us to understand really what God has called us to. That, as our old friend Warren Marlis used to say, God is in control and he has you right where he wants you to be. He has us right where we want to be, where he wants us to be. But it's only going to come out in the right place if we understand it from that perspective. So just as an encouragement, that if you want to go down this road and you see all of the conflict in this perspective, the next time that you decide to call someone up, see how they're doing, whatever, on whatever issue, I mean, don't call someone, don't hang out with someone who agrees with you. Hang out with someone that God has called into your life that disagrees vehemently, and see where God takes you. Because this is, and will always be, where God has you, will be the best incubator for developing you and me into the fullness of Jesus, who could deal with anything. He could deal with any worldview. You could see with his interactions with people. He never ran from conflict. He never, ever said, oh, you know, I just ignore that. Just ignore that. He met people where they were and said, okay, you're focused on this, and I'm not going to try and unfocus you. I am going to give you a broader perspective as to really what is important in all this.
Your comments, Jim. Well, as I said, I mentioned that verse that has been one of my sort of life verses, which, by the way, is 2 Corinthians 12:9. Just to get it. My grace is sufficient, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. And for many years, I just hung out on my grace is sufficient. I don't know, it had come to me I turned to it a lot, but I hadn't really read it, the whole verse, because the two parts are pretty darn important together. And I think I first recall being sort of really hearing that verse very loudly at a time when I was in a real crisis in my life. And for those of you who know me, especially in work or business or financial and the like, I tend to get really creative on so many possible solutions and scenarios. And I had been doing that for quite some time. And had really come up with some great, in my opinion, some great solutions. And God, fate, other people shut them down one at a time. And I remember coming to a moment in church, actually, on my knees in front of a church many years ago, at the front of a church, when I said, okay, God, everything I've tried, every door is closed. I can't, there's nothing more I can do. And as another friend of mine once told me, there are moments in our lives when the choices are very stark and very simple, and you either fall into the cross or you fall away from the cross. But there's no standing. You're going one direction or another. And I chose to fall into the cross. And in a weird way, even though at that time everything seemed very bleak and dark, there was a freedom in that too, of just knowing, okay, my life is in your hands. It always has been, but most of the time we forget it. Most of the time we act as if, we can, and truthfully we do, which is the biggest problem in many of our lives, is we're trying to do it instead of letting God lead us. But yeah. And I think, Jim, what you're saying is right. We need to turn to God and under his leading, with his wisdom, with his worldview, be willing and open and take the risk of not challenging, but engaging with those that, he's put into our lives, and trust that doing so and being honest won't lead to, misery and what it could lead to, but really will lead to openness and healing. And I'm always reminded that, as Christians, yes, we're called to stand up for what we know is true and right and godly, but we're also called to die for each other. And Christ, even as he was condemning sinners, to the extent he ever really condemned sinners, but at least telling them not to sin anymore, was on his way to the cross to die for those very same people. When we got that email and we were talking last night, I guess it was, about what to share, a song came to my mind. I had a singer that I had known of, sung some of his songs many years ago, hadn't really done so for the last, 10 or 15 years.
10 years, yeah.
His name is Marty Goetz, and he's a Messianic Jew, and a really gifted musician, singer, composer. And he's written a lot of wonderful, in my opinion, very impactful and prayerful songs. And this is a song I'd like to share called Breathe on Me.
Oh, yeah, you want to turn that up.
So I'm going to try, hopefully we'll get the sound balance right. But I'm going to try to share it with you. As I said, it's by Marty Goetz, and it's called Breathe on Me. Can you all hear that? Okay. The flame in my heart used to blaze with delight, but the sparks that rise into the sky, it vanished in the night. Now I want to once again burn for you as I did then. But to even try, there's something I must ask of you. I need you to breathe on me, breathe on me. It's been so long since the fire within burned bright and strong. Breathe on me, breathe on me, like a gentle breeze. Lord, I ask you, please, to tenderly breathe on me. Blow, Spirit, blow, come and fill my weary soul. In your mercy, send a holy wind. Until you do, I'll wait for you to breathe on me, breathe on me. It's been too long since the fire within burned bright and strong. Breathe on me, breathe on me, like a gentle breeze. Lord, I ask you, please, won't you tenderly breathe on me. It isn't that I've lost my desire. It's just that what once was a fire has dwindled again, and it needs to be kindled again. So breathe on me, breathe on me. It's been so long since the fire within burned bright and strong. Breathe on me, breathe on me. Deep inside I know hiding embers glow. They could grow into a flame for all to see. If you'd only If you'd only, if you'd only breathe on me. Thanks. They heard me.
Oh, no, that's right.
Wow, thank you for that song, Paul. That was really great. Were you playing the piano too?
No, but here's this. There is a little backstory I was thinking maybe I would share just because. So I was not. I don't play piano. Years ago I did actually buy accompaniments from Marty Goetz. The author sells some tracks, or at least in the old days would ship them on DVDs or the like. I can't find those anymore. And so when the idea of singing this came up last night and we were talking, we were
In
like,
bed.
in bed. We were, it was late at night. We were talking and said, well, remember you found Marty's stuff online and you were singing with it, maybe you can find it there. And it turned out I had found him online, but it was always with Marty singing. And so it wasn't an accompany track, and we couldn't find accompany tracks. I couldn't find my own. I could buy them again from Marty, but it takes a couple days because it's not an auto system. They have to email them, I'm sure, back or whatever they now do. So we and I was like, okay, I guess I can kind of save that idea for the future, and we'll see what else God brings. And meanwhile, Annette was on her phone, and she said, well, it looks like there's this website that will let you split off a soundtrack and split voices. Katie, I didn't know this existed. It didn't exist 10 years ago, but it's literally brilliant technology. And it'll even split out different instruments. But the main one it does is it'll split the accompany. And we didn't know if it would work, and certainly didn't know if there was time for today because we couldn't really make it work on our phones. So we went to bed and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna wake up this morning. If it all comes together, great. If it doesn't, that's okay. So I don't want to put too much on. God gifted somebody to create this tech online for this moment in time, but a lot of things actually had to come together to make that possible, and they did. So I do think it was not just my good idea or our good idea. But
And since you had already bought this.
We were saying on top of it, I have paid for the rights to have that song. So I didn't even, if I would have felt guilty, I could justify that as at least I didn't do anything.
Yeah, we have paid for it already.
Well, I just want to say great job, and you fooled me. I was like, wow, it's in such good time that, yeah. I thought you were playing the piano too.
With all the orchestrations in the back in the other room, I know I have these musicians from the symphony backing me up. So God bless.
Oh, that's true, huh? I wasn't even listening to that. That's true. I was just listening to the piano, but that's a great song though, and it's cheesy, but it made me think of the song "Lean on Me," which I think is. I just want to say that to everybody. I know we don't have a chance to talk as much, but I'm here, and the world is not what we want it to be, and it's not easy, and it's not fun going out every day and putting on our best self and trying to be the change we want to see. It's not easy, and we go through cycles, I think, of bravery and then just being disillusioned, and I think it's like getting back up on that horse. It's not as simple as dusting yourself off and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. We need help, and I think that comes down to people helping people, and so I just want to put it out there. If anybody ever wants to talk or anything like that, I'm always here. And I guess I'm really thankful now for having this live service today, because I get to hear your voices, and suddenly the world isn't as distant. Like our church is at reach again, just by having this service. And so despite its technical difficulties and hardships of doing something like this, I hope we do it again in the future, because it means a lot to me to fellowship with you all, even here virtually. And we got to be able to lean on each other, really, because it's hard, and we can have a tendency to feel alone, I think, especially in these times. So I love you all. Yeah. That's it.
Hey, Jason, I wanted to say that thank you for checking on my well-being after the Christmas video.
Oh, you heard that from Pastor Doug?
Yeah.
I was worried.
Yeah. You were the only one.
Oh.
Everyone else abandoned me.
Oh. Well, I can only say that I was moved. Your sign, especially, it said "help me," and I was like, "Well, dang it, I'm gonna help if I can." And so, I reached out to Pastor Doug to see if there was, anything I could do, and he said, "No, Jim's he's doing fine. Don't worry." It was pretty funny. Oh, goodness.
It's good to see you, Doug.
Thanks. I wasn't here at the beginning, so I didn't really know the ground rules, so I didn't know what to do or when to do it or how to do it. So it's good to be seen. Sorry I was late. I'm feeling a lot better. I'm assuming something was said at the beginning. I'm feeling much, much better, but my my sleep patterns have just been turned on their head. So I was up till 6 o'clock again this morning, and it's just really hard dragging myself out of bed. Actually, once I fall asleep, my body kind of takes over and I can't get out of bed. But today it's good to see everybody here. It's good to there's so many pictures that you can get, that I get when I'm just listening to what's going on. It ties all those things out. I didn't get to hear what Katie read. I didn't get to hear anything that came before that. But it's like it's a goofy illustration, but it's just like a potluck, man. Everybody's sitting here, you know, Paul's bringing his potato salad singing, and Jason's bringing some love and some realness to that we all can. Everybody kind of puts it out there, and it's I'm the wrong guy to be saying this because I don't do this in a potluck because of my taste. But you ought to take a little bit of everybody's stuff, you know. Like you ought to enjoy a little bit of everybody's stuff. And sometimes it's new, and sometimes it's not what you would do or go there. But the person is bringing themselves, and sometimes their selves is awesome, and sometimes their selves is broken, and it's angry, and it's not all right, which we're all not all right, hardly any of the time, if at all. And okay, we'll give that to you. Paul. Fine wine. Yeah, it was really good. But that's in a sense, as we do that, don't you sense, and I think this is God doing it, don't you sense this draws us together towards one another, not away from one another? And I think that if we would, you know, for me, over the past few weeks, and certainly this past week, I've had a little added bonus to my life, that each level keeps me, as an introvert, keeps me going deeper and deeper and deeper into these thought patterns of what's going on. And I just, you know, it's what's going on, God. And it's not just at a national level, but it's at a church level and in a personal level. I mean, when you got COVID, I'm just, basically for me, it's just been a bad flu. So I know that different people, some it's less, sometimes it's more. But it's been about a week. It's been a good week of just not only can I not go anywhere, but I'm not feeling really good. And I just think that God's showing me, or showing us again, that there's ways to live this life. I read a George MacDonald quote, and it says, God offers life, but we must choose to live. God offers us life, but we have to choose to live it, to put it into practice, to live it. This is a far different thing than choosing to be, quote, saved or accepting salvation. This is no matter of mere belief, but a description of how we live. And, you know, I realize that as with stuff falling apart, it's over the past few months, in my mind, I look at the world as being a place that does not bring life. And yet I think I'm still invested in so many different places in the world to where I'm trying to actually get life, whether it's news or politics or sports or entertainment or whatever is out there. But really, the enemy is, what's going on is the enemy's doing what the enemy does. And during this time, to be able to, I've made various decisions along the way just to remove myself. You don't remove yourself from life, but you remove yourself from being influenced by things and pouring out your passions and your energies and your desires on certain things and placing them back on where I know they ought to be. And as I've done that, you know, I'm reading my Bible more. I'm not doing a whole lot of I'm not doing a lot of stuff because I just don't have the energy to do it, but I'm reading more. I'm thinking a little bit more. I mean, even thinking through things sometimes has been wearing me out this week. But God has shown that if I place my mind on Him instead of my mind on other things, it's amazing how those things all kind of just fade away. And I know that they're out there, and you can kind of track, because information comes in various ways. But God has shown me that he's all this stuff that I believe, I say that I believe he is, and more. And if I just do things his way, it sets you in an atmosphere that gives you the ability to say, I can give myself towards the important things. Like Kim said, everybody's said a lot of great stuff. Kim says something to the fact of, I can't change anything on the national stage. And Paul, I think, might have said the same thing. Probably everybody does. But it's like, where am I to give my energies to? And I'm looking at these 9 boxes, kind of like the Brady Bunch on my TV screen or my video screen, and I'm realizing that God says, just do simple stuff. I mean, I've gotten to the place that I'm just questioning, am I even doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Do I do a good job at it? That I sure I find myself looking over things that I call totally wrong, and again, I'm not necessarily finished with my thinking through, but he's used this time to get my eyes back on him, my heart back on him, and my feet back on the path of doing what I know. I say I know it, and yet if you look at John Wimber used to say, you can tell what people value or what they love, but just look at their checkbook and their planner to see where they spend their resources and where they spend their time and their energies. And I just realized that so much of my life is spent on things that don't bring life, that basically suck life and divide. And even though I don't want them to, that's, the world, Satan, the devil, the world, and my flesh, all those things are not my friends. But God is, and you guys are. And so I think that God's been faithful to us. I think that the things that we've been talking about, again, he offers it to us, but we need to choose to live it. Are you going to die to yourself? Are you going to trust God? Are you going to love people as much as you can right now, knowing that you have a lot to learn and a lot to grow, and there's a lot of mistakes, but unless we choose to go do it, we'll never grow, and we'll just go the other way. And I think that we're all feeling that we need that. We need life. We need to be with one another. We need to hear each other's voice, and we need to not just hear each other's voice. We need to hear each other sing their songs, and we need to hear each other's put the scriptures out there that are meaningful to them, and why they're meaningful to them, and because life is a lot bigger than me, and even though I settle into the place of thinking that it isn't, it's when I'm with you folks, like in times like this, that I feel fuller. My life feels fuller on me. It's because of what you guys are all doing. So God's made us that way. So anyways, you probably can't tell because of the light, but I'm crying right now. So I just love everybody. And there's so much baloney going on that we get caught up in the stuff that the world gets caught up in. And it's pretty simple. We were watching the Queen's Gambit, and there's a scene in Moscow, and there's just like the thing about Queen's Gambit is about chess, right? So she goes to Moscow, and everybody plays chess. She's like this child prodigy, but in Moscow, it's like everybody plays chess. And she was walking down the street, and it's cold, it's winter, and there are just makeshift tables set up down the sidewalk with 60, 80 old guys just sitting every day playing chess on the, and it's kind of like, I'm thinking that's what life is, should be, the simple thing of going down and playing chess with some other old guy on the street. Again, extrapolate that. Life ought to just be simple of us just loving one another, of us just getting together and have a meal, getting together and hanging out. And yeah, we have work to do. And yeah, we have projects to do. But life, I think, is supposed to be a lot simpler than we make it. All right, I'm done. Thanks, everybody.
Doug, it's interesting you brought up the food analogy, because the scripture that ran through my head at the time that you said it was the admonition that said, it's either Paul or Jesus. I get them mixed up sometimes. To eat what's put before you. And I'm thinking, like, in this forum, we haven't heard from some of the people here. And I believe that God has given you something to put before everyone. You may not think that God has given you something to put before everyone. And I would just encourage you to step into that, because we need you to step into that. And Courtney, I'm looking right at you now when I'm saying.
No pressure there.
Yes, well, I've unmuted my mic, and I don't know why. I thought that this was just, when I first read the message, I just thought this was going to be a get-together. And then when I reread the message, it said to contribute. And I'm thinking, okay. And for me, for this sort of period, the one thing that's the one word that probably comes through my mind most and most is comfort. And I you know, it's just what's been going through my mind. And then as the thoughts develop and so on, and it came down to John 11 and the raising of Lazarus, and the events that took place at that particular time. And so I read it, and there was so much in that. And but the one thing that I will share with all the thoughts that went through my mind was the fact that basically the things that come to my mind was the ways in which people react to situations. Basically, you have Martha and Mary reacting to the events of the time. And when Jesus finally, after 4 days, goes along to see his friends, Martha comes along and is all oh, why weren't you here? And what's going on? And you could have saved him, my brother, etc., etc. She was upset and agitated and asking questions and really, oh, what's going on? And, you know, I don't understand and so on. And Jesus ends up talking about life after death. And then after a little while, then you get Mary. And Mary dealing with the situation, she's just so totally overcome that she's just silent. So what does Jesus do? He cries with her. So basically what I've been thinking on the theme of comfort is the fact that during this particular time, there are going to be times when you are all agitated and all upset and why aren't you doing, God, why aren't you doing this? What's going on? I don't get it, etc., etc. And he's going, yep, you're clueless. You're clueless, right? Okay, well, I'll calm down. Right, let's go through things together. You know, let's read something together. Let's spend some time together. You know, and so on. And then there'll be times when, as Doug was saying, there's the times when you don't want to get out of bed. There are times when it's just, I give up. That's it. Nothing. But you're not alone. And you are going to be comforted. And, you know, from a personal point of view, there's probably, you know, the front door's locked and I'm hardly going out, etc., etc. So, you know, it's pretty I'm pretty isolated and so on. So, you know, there are a lot more times of being quiet and being comforted than there is of times when I'm trying to find out what the heck is going on. So that's what I wanted to share this morning. So thanks for the opportunity.
Derek, I hate to further put you on the spot, but could you speak those words over everyone here?
Yay. Jesus, we come together. Jesus, we thank you for this this technology, this opportunity, this ability to be able to look at a little bit of silicon and glass and so on, and be able to see faces that we know and appreciate and love. And we just thank you, Jesus, that this at this time we have this opportunity and this fellowship and this shared love, the love that we have for each other, but more importantly, the love that you pour into each and every one of us. So at this time, Lord, when we have all these things going on, all these problems that we face, all the difficulties and the fact that we really don't understand things, that we can be quiet for a moment and just close our eyes and just receive your love and receive your comfort at this time. So thank you, Lord. We love you.
Thanks, Derek. That actually may end up being our closing prayer unless someone else has anything to bring.
You're muted, Dana.
That's funny. Usually we do the mute and unmute by the phone, but I don't know. I guess it must have been default mute. Okay, are we on now? All right, excellent. So I had a verse that came into my mind last night to share, and it's from Romans 8, 37 through 39, and it says a lead up to that, kind of talking about the hardships and persecution that the church is facing. And 37 starts with, "No, in all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord." And it seemed at first to me to not really fit with what the conversation was today. But then I realized that it does fit, because we've been talking a lot about loving each other, and it kind of popped into my mind about, we love because he first loved us. And it also ties with what Derek just said nicely too, and that, if we're going to love each other, the best way to do that is to fill ourselves with the love of God for us, like Derek was just talking about. So I guess that's the thought that I want to leave with everyone.
Dana,
And
I
I think
actually,
that might have something too.
I
Oh,
just
go
want
ahead.
to say, Dana, I actually, that verse came to me during people talking today too. So I like, good confirmation. That was great.
Cool. Do you want to share something too?
Yep, just an experience I had. So a couple of days ago, I was talking to our next door neighbor who just moved out. So he and his family just moved back to Pakistan, and he was a researcher at the lab. And they were having trouble getting a flight even to get back to Pakistan. So finally they were able to do that, and they moved out a couple of days ago. And we were having a conversation because we were basically taking a lot of the things they couldn't sell, and like their tables and stuff and things like that. But anyway, at one point we were having a conversation. He was telling me about how he got his job at the lab, and he was saying that he worked in Spain, and he made some relationships, like professional relationships there, and then that led to a relationship with somebody who worked at Lawrence Livermore, and then he got there, and he'd gotten a good paper, and somehow all these little things just worked out right. And this is one of those things that I've seen this happen in my life before, but it's not been recently where anything like this has happened. And of course, since I'm paying attention very much to what he's saying, because he's basically describing a process which I really long to see right now, but I haven't seen it again in some years, but I kind of need to see it right now. And he finally concludes telling me this story with, "You just got to have faith," and I don't really know what his background is. He might be Muslim, I'm not sure, but just the way he said that is kind of like, it got me thinking. It's like, wow, I feel very spurred on by this, like whatever we're facing, maybe the thing to do is just trust God, and that's it. I mean, it's very simple. I mean, it's not I'm not saying don't do something, when it's in our power to do something. But I guess what I'm saying is when we're in these situations where we don't have the answers and we have no way of pushing forward, maybe trusting God is really the very simple thing that we gotta hear out of this. And that might be the case for me, and I don't know if it's the case for anyone else here, but yeah, that's what I feel, But yeah, that's my experience for, over the last week.
I think you heard from God. I think God weighed in. One of the things that at least my background taught me was that non-believers and people of other persuasions that are trying to follow God but are labeled something different, that there's no value in their experiences and what they tell me. And I have since reversed my understanding of that after hearing someone who was strong in the pro-life movement. She gave a speech on the conversion of someone who was equally as strong in the pro-choice movement. And what she said was, the hardest thing that we deal with are people who are apathetic to the whole discussion. People who are passionate in that discussion are much easier to persuade to the truth. And it was an interesting thing. So if if it was a point of wisdom and truth that he discovered, I'd hang on to that. And I would take that as something that God knew you needed to hear.
And I just wanted to say something to that. Jim gave us an exercise this week, and you came to mind. And I will be contacting the two of you later. I'm not going to share that right here, but it's along that line. It's along that line. And you're coming to mind constantly. You are, I do believe that this is a word for you. So I will share that with you privately through text later. But God's moving in your life.
Okay, so everyone done? Okay. What a grand experiment. You all did fabulous. Seriously.
And so did you.
We're gonna do
Thanks,
it again
Annette.
next week.
I need my ego stroked constantly. I tell you the truth. Okay. We will be, I guess, in touch with what format we proceed with. Again, we're dealing with this on the fly, but that is life in the kingdom.
One day at a time.
One day at a time. Yes, we do and encounter what's in front of us. All right, blessings.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. It was wonderful to see you.
Wonderful.
Love to all.
I guess we lost Jason, but Derek, really good to see you too.
Yes. Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Bye.
Bye.